Everybody, and welcome to Neela's Succession Planning and Elections. Um, Today, I'll be talking about succession planning and what it means to have a healthy chapter that is sustained year over year. My name is Aaron Guzman, um, and I'll be you guys' presenter for today. So, a little bit about myself. I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering from San Francisco State. I went on to work as a um, technical program manager at eBay, where I reported to one of the VPs and focused on engineering initiatives across the whole organization. My history with SHIP started when I was in community college. Um, we would host an event called Breakfast with Engineers, and we would invite the SHIP San Francisco Bay Area professional chapter into the speed networking event. And so that's where really I was introduced to the world of SHIP and the professionals. Um, I stayed in contact with the professional chapter through my community college years as I transferred to a four-year university at San Francisco State. And so really it's an honor and a privilege to be now the president of the professional chapter and to be here with you guys presenting this really institutional knowledge of how this chapter has been able to maintain its health throughout these years. So today I'm going to be talking about why succession planning matters, succession planning tips, and election planning tips. So these tips um, are important because they span not just your term, but it sets up the success for your future um, boards. So why does succession planning matters? Um, so it prevents burnout and loss of knowledge, right? You want to make sure that you have a smooth transition between board and board. Sometimes there could be the case where it's one person mainly driving the chapter, mainly taking care of all the action items, all the relationship. And when that person leaves, all that history is taken with them, right? All the chapter loses. So we want to make sure that we maintain this institutional knowledge that if people choose so, they could go back into the files and learn about its history, learn about what worked, what didn't work. Um, so we want to make sure that we also build trust and transparency between board members. We want to make sure that everything is recorded, any tips are passed down from year to year. And this also ensures that any historical knowledge isn't lost, any historical events aren't lost. Um, it makes sure that we build strong relationships with our corporate partners and with other nonprofits. Um, Also, if there's tools that have worked in the past, we want to make sure that, certain tools, like for example, the credentials, the passwords don't get lost year after year. And this helps create a healthy, sustainable chapter for year after year. And most importantly, it sets up the incoming executive board up for success. Okay, so these are my five succession planning tips. I'm going to go into each one into detail. Um, so it's going to be the bi-yearly board retreat, one-on-one office check-ins, creating a transition document, a centralized location for chapter knowledge, and a potential officer mixer. So we jump into the bi-yearly board retreat. So this takes place before each term, so before the fall term, before the spring term, um, and all of the board gets together and we align against goals and priorities. We want to make sure that everybody's aware of the national chapter program, the national reporting program, and everybody's aware of the chapter management tools. So we have clarity across all board members to know what we're all working for. This is also where we assign each officer specific goals and specific events for the year. For example, right now, as we're in summer, um, we'll be setting up all and planning all the events through December, and we'll have another bi-yearly board retreat at the beginning of the year in January, where we plan out the rest of the year. And most of these dates should align according to um, the reporting program that SHIP National has set up. This helps build ownership and accountability across all our board members, and we want to make sure that we have clarity um, across all of our board members too. So, one-on-one officer check-ins. This is where the president meets individually with each officer. And so this is outside of our regular cadence of executive board meetings. And this is to ensure that we're talking one-on-one and we ensure and we review any blockers. We look at any process and we also look at the event planning. We want to make sure that we connect also as the individual that we have and maintain a relationship. So if anything ever comes up, if they're ever struggling to maintain or to help plan events, the president is aware of anything, right? We want to make sure the president has this overall um, long-term visibility to see if an officer is coming trumps or drops the ball, that the president is there to able to pick up the pieces and make sure that we're continuing with chapter goals. Um, and so also we want to make sure that all officers have buy-in. SHIP is a volunteer role. And so we want to make sure that each officer is focusing on projects that matter to them. We want to make sure that they are really bought into the events, types of events that they're doing, that they're having fun, that they're enjoying their time here in SHIP, and part of your chapter. And we do that by having these one-on-one um, check-ins with the president. Okay, creating a transition document. So this document is used um, in those transition periods between an outgoing and incoming president. Each document, each officer role has their own transition document. And this transition document should have any flagship events that they've led, any events or tasks that they were responsible for, the history of those events, any point of contacts, um, any roles and responsibilities that they played. And this is, for example, if you're having a historical event that you partner with a corporate partner or another nonprofit, there's clear visibilities of in the past, these are the roles and the responsibilities that we've guided that you want to make sure that you maintain this clear visibility. Any tools that you recommend they should be using, any action items, even between the transition periods. Um, Sometimes there's still events that are in motion. So we want to make sure those action items still should be followed up with. This transition document should also include a timeline of key events, any tips for success, any important information or resources. And this document is reviewed one-on-one with the outgoing and incoming officer. So the outgoing officer should sit down with the incoming officer and review all of these details to making sure that when you set up the incoming officer for success, we want to make sure that they have history of everything that's been going on in the past year and they have visibility down the road of anything that they should be aware of. So what does a transition document look like? So this is a transition document that was passed on to me um, as I started my term. Um, so any flagship events, for example, we see a split up by fall and spring term. We see the name of the event, the point of contacts, and a short sentence of the history of events. This is useful to me because as we're planning these events, I know who I should be contacting and I know the history of it. Um, Next, after the flagship events, after each term, there should be a list of action items. Any action items um, that are happening to make sure, again, that the ball doesn't get dropped, that we keep the momentum up from the previous year. Um, so again, this is just screenshot straight from my transition document, the stuff that I needed to do through the summer to ensure that we prop up and set up all of our officers for success. And so just a check mark, what needs to get done, and I just check stuff off as things get done. Same transition document should also maintain a history of all of their events. So here we could see it's split up by month, whether there's a theme for that month. And this goes back years, right? And using this document, the chapter management tools, our chapter knowledge, we're able to see and evolve these events to make sure that we're having the impact that we want on our members. We want to make sure that if some things didn't work in the past, that we use that knowledge and we continue to improve. So I mentioned chapter knowledge. What is a chapter knowledge? So for our chapter, it's a shared drive. This shared drive is owned by um, our chapter's email, a Gmail. And so any assets that are created by the officers um, should all be owned by that chapter Gmail. So for example, any marketing material, any event worksheets, any contacts, they all get saved in a centralized location, and we make sure that the owner is the chapter Gmail. And this also provides visibility across any board members. If somebody's out sick or they're out of office, we can make sure that an officer is able to go into that location and find the documents that they need. And again, this creates that institutional knowledge and that sustainability. We want to make sure that we have a record of all these credentials, all these events, all these different assets. So any board member could look back to the previous year, previous years even, and see what worked, what didn't work. So here's a screenshot of what our drive looks like. It's split up by terms, so we can see it goes back as far as 2016. But I could go into each folder and see um, pictures and any notes that they've had from our events. Each folder, each one of these terms um, has it is split up into this format. It maintains any uh, chapter logos, chapter templates. Um, it maintains our national reporting program, and then it's split up between all of our roles. So as a certain role takes initiative or takes lead of a certain event, they have all their documents that they've created into one folder. So again, it's easily accessible, right? All of our financials are saved in the treasurer's document. All of our um, board meeting notes are saved in our board meetings folder. Anything related to do with the website is saved in the webmaster. That way, we're easily able to find all of our needed documents. Within each folder, um, we have a setup of each event, and each event maintains an event worksheet. And this event worksheet helps populate the chapter management tool and helps populate our report. And sort of outlines who was the officer point of contact for this event, what was the SMART objective, the name of the event. This gets down even to the marketing, to the budget, to the plus and deltas. If we were to have this year over year, what do those changes look like? It also has down the history of the event. And so we use this tool and we learn from it. So year after year, we can have improvements. We could see what worked, we could see what didn't work. We see any suggestions that the previous person had. We're able to go in and see their recommendations, even if they've, are no longer in contact with the board. We have this historical knowledge. So potential officer outing. So these are events that are hosted in April and May as a networking event um, for new potential candidates who want to run for a role. But we want to make sure that we start as early as January, planting those seeds to see who would be interested in becoming a leader in the chapter. And so throughout that whole term, we have this event to anybody that we notice would be interested in joining the board. We host an event. And so past here we have a picture of me and my board going to Giants games, a baseball game. And this helps encourage informal conversations um, with the board that's leaving and potentially the incoming board, um, and they could see what it's like, and they could talk to them um, to see really to gain insights of what it's like being a leader in the chapter. Um, we want to make sure that we start advertising officer roles 1 or 2 months well into advance of elections, and I'll talk to that about that in the next slide. But you want to start planting these seeds as early as possible, and that's how you maintain interest in becoming a chapter leader. Okay, election planning tips. Like I said, you want to make sure you start as early as February and start publishing an election timeline well in advance. What does the timeline of events look like? When does voting start? Voting start? When does the submission of personal statements start? We want to make sure that you hit all of your outreach methods. So email, Discord, word of mouth. This is why it's so important to start as early as possible. Because early in the year, you have all these events that you're already seeing your members, and you could be in contact with them. And again, planting that seed to see who would be interested in becoming a leader. You want to make sure that you appoint an election chair to help run the process. And so they would be in charge, then with a chair and a co-chair, to come up with the election timeline to make sure that you're pushing these events, that you're outlining the personal statement collections of voting, and you want to make sure that you define a canon of requirements. So depending on your leadership structure, this is whether a president or a vice president, whether you require them to have at least served 1 year on the board before they run for these positions. So again, you want to make sure that you have a clear definition of chapter requirements, whether it be through president or vice president. You want to make sure that you're collecting a personal statement, and this is for voting, who they are and what CHEP means to that, right? Whether they have experience at the collegiate level for professionals, or whether they're looking, whether they were part of a CHEP junior chapter in high school. You want to see um, who you are voting for in these times, right? We want to make sure that you have enough time so all of your members can vote. So we recommend a voting period of 2 weeks. And this sets us up. If you plan ahead and you're planting the seeds as early as possible and you have your elections, it should align with the closing of your final report towards the end of the CHEP year. Thank you, everybody. If you guys have any questions regarding chapter knowledge or the templates that I've showed on the slide, you could reach out to officers at chepsfva.org, or you could reach out to your regional vice president for any succession planning tips or election tips. Thank you.